Okay, so in the last class, what we have done, we have seen how do you create stored procedures and functions, right? We talked about how do you do parameterized stored procedure, non-parameterized stored procedure. We have seen how do you use stored procedures with the execute. What's the advantage of having a stored procedure? You can do select, delete, drop, alter any of the DDL, DML commands you can do inside the stored procedure. Whereas on the function, you cannot do everything. It's just select, it returns back something to the user, right? It doesn't do delete inside the function, and the function can only be used with the select. You have used the functions when we started the class. You have used function like aggregate functions, date time function, string function, right? So what we have seen in the last class was how to build your own function when you need one in the select. Let's say you have like complex expression that you don't want to rewrite every time when you're writing select query. So all you do is you call the function, pass the input parameters, whatever required for this expression to return the value, and that becomes handy, right? So those were the two things that are used a lot in the database, because you have everything in the table. When you're trying to mine the data or when you're trying to analyze the data, all you need is stored procedures and functions. You barely have like just a select statement. You always try to put in some wrapper, either in the function, in the stored procedure. So we're gonna see different kind of wrappers today as well, other than just stored procedures and the function. So let's say, because you know how the data is distributed in different tables. It's not like everything is in same table and you get, oh, I need that this data, and it comes everything from the same table. It's never gonna happen. So you always, this is called the normalized data, where you have the data resides in multiple tables. Whenever you try to retrieve some information, you're not gonna get it just directly from one table. You always have to go multiple tables to get the data that you need. So in those scenarios, what you do is, let's say you're trying to look information about person, his contact name, his address, and his state, his country, all those information. Do you remember when we were doing the joins, we did like 4 or 5 joins in order to get person full address with his country, with his state name, with his address, with his name and everything. So and let's say you use that, you try to get person's address like very frequently, and you don't want to put that thing in the stored procedure, and the function won't work for that, because the stored procedure cannot be used with the select. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to use that select query that returns the person address with different tables on your database. You're trying to join with the customer table. Sometimes you're trying to join with the sales table to get their person address, or sometimes you're trying to do is just get the address for the people. So when you're trying to join that address which has multiple joins, you don't want to repeat that activity again and again, like make 6 joins when you have to join with customer table, or make 6 joins when you have to join that with the sales table. So what you can do, can you use the stored procedure? No, because if you make the stored procedure with those joins, it cannot be used in the select statement, because stored procedure is not allowed. So what you can do, you can create the view that can be used inside the select statement. So what is view? So view is nothing but, it's a simple view of the data on top of your tables. Okay, so when you're creating a view, what you're doing is, so think about in a room, when you're standing outside the door, you just see a half portion of the room. You don't see everything from inside the room. So let's say if you're standing at an angle to the room, you don't see everything. So think about the view is the same thing. The view gives you not the full view, but just what inside the database about some of the tables. It doesn't give you everything. So view is usually when you have multiple tables joined together and that have like aggregated, applied, or just complex queries that you can write, and then you want to reuse it again and again, and you make that a view, and then view acts exactly same as the table. Only the thing is, underlying the view you have multiple tables. Okay, so let's say if I have to create a view for the employee table, or let's say for the address that we have seen in one of the class, right? So let me see if I can find this one. So what I'm trying to do is find the join that we have done for address thing to get the address. So here it is. So do you remember this query? When we have to get the address, city, name and state name and country of the person, we did this join. Now you use this again and again every time. Okay, and now this you use in conjunction with the other tables. Okay, so this is the table that you just used to get the address. Now let's say you need this with the other tables to join and get some other information. What would you do? You have to write this whole thing again and make one more join, right? But that would be painful to write the whole thing every time. So what you do is you create a view out of it. What view will do is it encompass everything but just with a alias. Okay, you can think about that as. So let's say if I have to create a view out of it, I just say create view and the name of the view, and I want to name the view as VW, so I know when I look at the object name, I know it's a view VW represents for. Okay, and I say it's an employee address view. Okay, so I call it as a create view name, and then you say as, and that's it. Okay, create view name and as. So all you're gonna do is, you know how to create any of the objects in the database. You say create and then the object that you want to create. So you're trying to create a view named this as, this is your logic to build that view. Okay, so if I execute this, it's gonna, okay, it says it's complaining about the order by clause is invalid in the view. So in the view you cannot use the order by, okay, because when you create the view, it doesn't allow you to have data aggregated. Okay, I mean like the sorted. Okay, if you have to do the order by, you should be doing order by on the view outside. You cannot do inside the view. Okay, so that's the only thing that is not allowed in the view, because you cannot sort the data within the view. Okay, it's not allowed. So you do is create view as this, whatever your query is, and now let's say when you have to do access this view, all you need to do is select star from, so it acts exactly as the table. So you say select star from, how you say the table name, you can say the view name as well. Select star from view. When you execute this, it's going to give you the same thing what you have query in here. So instead of writing this query again and again every time, the whole thing, all this aliased as this thing in your database, right? So, and now if you want to order by employee ID, you can just say order by employee ID. Okay, so if you do this, it's going to order by employee ID on the database. Okay, so the view is basically all you're doing is the complex query that you had, you converted alias is as this name. Okay, and now let's say if you have to join some other table on this one, let's say if you want to join, let me see, in Adventure Works, what are the tables that you can join on? Let's say you want to find out the employee department history. Okay, you want to find out their department name and department information. So what you can do is you can just join on this view, and you don't have to write the whole thing. The condition is you need employee address and his department information. Okay, so you need all these columns, and you need one more column is the department ID. So now you don't have to write the whole thing. All you do is put the from, and then you join on human resources dot employee department history, and you say EDH, whatever the alias is for this thing. You alias this as EA, and you say on, you're gonna say EA dot employee ID equals to EDH dot employee ID, right? So now you have joined the employee table, employee address, which and with the employee department history. So if you run this query now, you're just not gonna get his address information, you're getting more information about the employee from the department table. So think about, you don't have, instead of this, if you don't have the view, you should be writing this first, everything from here to here, right? And then you would be having this join, which is like after department history, right? Okay, so in order to avoid this huge query which you need it every time, you make it as a view and you can use it. Okay, that's the purpose of the view, to make things simpler. Sometimes it's also used for, let's say if you have employee table and it has SSN, okay, what you do is you make a view which hides the SSN. You don't want to share SSN with everybody. Only few people can see the view. So the view is not necessarily when you have the complex join. It would be useful when you say from human resources.employee, you select all the columns except employee SSN. Okay, so let's say if everybody from your company has to access the employee information, but you don't want to give the SSN, what do? You say, okay, you can have access to the employee view, but not to the employee table. So what you can do is you create a view that has all the columns except SSN. So when they're gonna access the view, they're not gonna see the employee SSN, but they can see everything else on the table. So the view can be used to hide some information that you don't want to share with everybody. Okay, and then what you do is, because in the database no one can get in without, if you don't have the permission to the database. Similarly, if you have to access any of the objects in the database, you need to have the proper permission. So what DBA can do is they can give everybody who don't need to access the SSN, they can give access to the view, not to the table, to everybody. Only few people can have access to the table, right? So the view can be used to either make the complex things simpler, look simpler, or to hide some information that you don't want to share with everybody. Okay, basically that's what the view is, and it's very simple. Create view, view name, and as whatever your logic is. So any select query that you think of, we have learned till now, you can use it in here, having, group by, any of the functions that you can have. Okay, only thing is you don't include the order by in here. Okay, so if you have to, once you create the view, you're no longer using it. Okay, or you want to alter the view. So what you can do is, where are the views found? So if you see in here in the adventure works, there is a separate folder for views. So if you expand, you're gonna have the views that are created in the database, and we just created the view called employee address. Okay, if you want to alter this view, let's say you come after 15 days, you want to alter this view, you want to add one more join that you use very frequently. What you can do is you can right click on the object and you say script view as create to alter to, because you want to modify the view. So you say alter to new query window. What it's going to do is it's going to bring your view what you had. So instead of create, it's going to say alter view, view name, and your query. So whatever you want to add in here, you can add another join, and then you can alter the view. So what it's going to do is it's going to change the view if you have to change the view. If you don't want the view, all you need to do is right click and delete the view. Or you can say is drop view, view name. You know how to drop the objects, right? So if it's a table, you say table. If it's a view, you say drop view, view name. If you're going to do this, it's going to drop the view. So now I don't have the view anymore. So if I execute this query, I'm going to get an error because the view doesn't exist anymore. I dropped the object. Okay, so if I refresh, it's gone from here because I dropped it. So only three things you can do: create a view, alter a view, and drop a view. Okay, so you cannot say something like this, delete from the view. You cannot delete the data from the view. That's another advantage. So let's say if you see the data in the view, okay, let me recreate the view. If I recreate the view, okay, and then you're seeing this view, you cannot say delete employee ID 261 and you think about it's going to delete everything from all the tables. No, you cannot delete from the view. Where you say delete from view, it's not going to delete this row. It can never happen because the view gets the data from all these underlying tables. So you cannot just say delete employee ID 261, okay, which will delete all these. No, because it resides in separate table. So whenever you do the view, it can have only run in the select statement. The view can be run only with the select. It cannot be run with the for deleting the data or updating the data. No, it doesn't work. Okay, so you can basically you cannot update the data for the view because the view is it's not a physical object. It's coming from a set of different tables. It's coming from set of different tables, right? So that's why you cannot update the view or delete the data from the view. Okay, all you need to do is, let's say if I ask you, can you give me only those employee IDs who is less than 100, what would you do? If you don't want to see everything from the view, this view has lots of information, right? All the employees. All you want to see is You want to see the employees whose employee ID is less than 100. What would you do in order to get only the information from? Yeah, right. So you don't need to delete the data from the view. All you need to do is you say when employee ID is less than equal to or less than whatever 100, right? So basically you filter the view instead of deleting the data from the view. So you do lots of filtering. You don't have to do filtering on the, you don't have to alter the view for this. All you do is you do in your select, you write the filter. You're not gonna write filter inside the view and alter it. No. View is, it gives you everything, and then whenever you need something from the view, you just write a where condition on when you use it. Okay, you don't alter the view for getting different information. Okay, does it make sense what I'm saying? So you're not going to do something like that. Oh, I need only employee ID 1 to 100. I'm going to alter the view this time. Alter view where e dot employee ID is less than 100. You're not going to do this in here. Okay, because that doesn't make sense. Because let's say if next time you need the employee ID from 100 to 200, you need to change the view again. No, so you don't do that. Always you write view with the filter when you need it. You don't alter the view for these filtrations. You keep the view everything, and then you do filter when you use the view. Okay, so this is more static. It hardly changes. It only changes when you want to add more information, when you want to add the joins or you want to take out the joins, because if you don't need some information. But you're not going to put filters on the view. I mean, you put it sometime, but not the cases like when you need certain information from the table. Yes. Yes. No. That's correct. It will always be there in this folder. So the view is nothing but the script. This is the script. Okay, and the script will be saved in this folder, and then it can be accessed anytime until you drop it. Yes, so the view doesn't store the data. If you say this view stores this data, no, the view doesn't store the data. The tables underlying it stores the data, and it gives you the data from those tables when you need when you call the view, it gets the data from the tables. View never store the data. View is just simple a script of your SQL. That's it. It's not a table, it's nothing. The view is a script that is inside the wrapper or inside the view that you use to call the data from different tables. It never stores it. Okay, so the view is not it's a physical object, but it doesn't store the data. Yes, so the view are used a lot in the industry. Why do you need it? Because you don't have the information in one table. So what you usually do is when you're gonna go in the company, they're gonna have view like employee for report sales, v employee department. So all these inside them, they almost have 2-3 joins. That these are the information that you use regularly. So you make a view out of it, so you don't have to write the joins every time. Okay. Yeah. Yep, because so the idea behind is because you don't want to store everything in one table, right? And if you cannot store everything in one table, and you have to access those tables again and again, whenever you want to find something, you have to join at least 2-3 tables. So in order to keep things repetitive, you try to avoid that repetition by creating a view. So you go against the view instead of going against the table, instead of like doing joins every time and making the query complex. Okay, all right. So yes. So if you right click and you want to access the script, you say I want to script the view as alter to. So it's going to create as alter view name. So alter view report sales. Or you say, okay, I want to see what the view is, what's the script inside the view. You say alter to new query window. So it's going to give you the view which has like, so let's see. So that's it. The view is simply like it can be used as a table. It's just on top of your multiple tables. You create a view. Now the view, so you can, I said you can create view, and then if you need to alter, you can alter, and then you can drop the view, and the view can only be used in the select statement. That's it. So inside the from, right, because it's on the from, you use the view. So now let's say okay, so and there is one more thing that you don't need to worry much about it, but you need to know when you have the very complex view, when you have lots of queries, right? And what people usually do is they create the view, and because they need the information over and over, what happens is, because there is, let's say if these how many tables, 6 tables are in here, right, in this view, and when each of the tables is very huge, this view becomes slow, right? What I'm saying is, because this view is fast right now because all the tables are very small. Now let's say you created a view where each of the tables has millions of rows, and when you run the view, select star from view name, okay, it takes minutes and minutes. It's returning lots of data. It's returning like 30-40 million rows. That makes it very slow. How do you make it faster? What did you do in order to retrieve the data from the table faster? You created an index on it, right? So the same thing you can do. Yep. So the same thing you can do on your views. You can create an index. Okay. So let's say this query returns slow. You can do is you can create the view on the you can create the views on your indexes on your views in order to retrieve the data faster. Okay, so sometime when you join like this view with this join and it's running very slow, what you do is you can have the indexes created on the view. Okay, so that helps this query to run faster. Okay, because when you create a view, the indexes that are behind it cannot be used when it's used with another join. Okay, so let's say when I'm using these two tables together and I'll join, is there any index on the view? No. So if there is no index when you join, it will be poor performance. So what you can do is you can create the index on the view so that when you join these two together every time, it gives you good performance. Okay. Okay. So now the next thing that we want to see is the schema. I know we haven't talked, we just barely talked about what are the schemas in one of the class, and I told you it helps you to organize the tables that you have in the database. If you don't have the schema, everything will be DBO, which is database, okay, objects, database objects. So database objects, now think about if you don't have any schema in your database, what it's going to look like is all the object starts with DBO. So you don't have any of the tables organized, okay, and you don't know all the tables that works together, okay, and in the real time you're going to be finding scenarios like this where everything is in DBO. So this is like ideal database. That's why you have very organized data structure inside the database. The human resources lies inside the human resources, person, production. Usually when you go out, you're going to find everything in just DBO, and then you look at the ERD diagram and you find out what tables are connected. Okay, so what schema has advantages when you create the schema in your database, how it's helpful. Okay, what it helps when you have a schema. First, it organizes the table structures together. So all the human resources, you can see all these are the tables that are related to human resources is in the human resources schema. So the human resources is the schema, department is the name of the table, okay, or sometimes it's also called as what is the table name? Human resources dot department. Okay, but this is the schema name in front of this. Okay, anything before dot is a schema name. Okay, so now how is the schema helpful? So let's say your company is huge, okay, and this database is accessed by human resources people, production people, and the sales people, and the purchasing people, okay, who are in the purchasing department, who are in the production department, who are in the sales department, who are in the human resources department. So, and you have lots and lots of table inside each of these schema. So tomorrow, let's say if you add a new table or a new object with which is either inside the human resources or in person or in production schema. Okay, when you add a new object, not necessarily a table, any new object, it could be either the stored procedure, function, view, which is inside any of these schemas. That schema, the object that you created inside that schema would be directly available to all the users who belongs to the human resources group. So the DBA doesn't have to give an exclusive permission to that, so that new object will become available to all the human resources people. So what I'm trying to say is it lowers the burden of the DBA. They don't have to give the access to all the, so let's say in human resources you have 10 people, and developer created a new object that is a stored procedure in human resources schema. Okay, that stored procedure will be directly available as soon as the developer creates inside the human resources schema based on the permission, because all the people who belongs to human resources department will have access to human resources schema. So whatever objects will be getting added to your group will be directly available. You don't need to seek the permission from the DBA. So think about if you have in a sales team, you have 1000 people, and let's say if you add a new object, a function in the sales schema, that function doesn't need to be give permission to everybody. That function will be accessible directly by the sales group. But if that function needs to be accessed by the human resources, then you have to give access to human resources schema. Okay, so basically it helps the person to have direct object directly accessible once it's created inside their group. They don't have to seek the permission from someone. Does it make sense? So that's why the schema are used. They are used to make sure that if you have categorized the thing with the department, any new object that is created inside the department would be directly available. Okay, so that eases lots of the DBA work about giving the permission, taking out the permission, giving the permission. So let's say if you have a table email which is under the DBA schema, it might not be available to any of the people in here. It will be only available who have access to DBO, who are the but if I move this table to human resources, it will be directly available to human resources people, the email table. Okay, so the schema helps organize and handles the permission inside the database. Okay, all right, so that's the advantage. Now don't worry about how to give the permissions to the schema. Okay, when we're gonna see a little bit permissions, we're gonna see what you do is usually you make a person, he has an access to the database, and you give him the permission from one group. So let's say Adan is a person who works in the production department. What I would do is when I would add him inside the database, I will say this person belongs to the production. Okay, and now he has access to all the production schema objects, production schema tables, production schema stored procedure, functions, views. Okay, nothing outside that, just only which is inside, because when I added in the database I said he belongs to that schema. Okay, so that's all you need to do. When you add the person inside the database, you say this belongs to this, and everything can be, if let's say Adan moves from production department to the sales, all I need to do is just need to say, okay, this person is now in this sales group. When you're inside that group, you lose the permission from all the production and you get the permission on the sales data. Okay, and then it's not necessarily that person can have only within one schema. Let's say I handle let's say if anybody is the VP of the company and he needs the information from sales, purchase, and the production, he can have access to all three. So anything inside these three he can have access, but he cannot have access to human resources. So the permissions are so granular, you can control the permissions on the schema level, on the table level, on the object level, any way you want. So let's say that he is the VP of the table, but he cannot access one of the tables. So you can do everything, and then you can say, okay, I don't want to give him the access to this particular table, which is like has only access by CEO of the company. Okay, so you can give everything and take out one of the objects from the permissions. So it's so granular that that you can control the at object level, each single object level. You want to give the permission, you want to include, exclude. The granularity is there in the database. All these permissions are handled by DBA. Whoever is the administrator of the database, they do all these things. So even when you go on your job for the first day, or you're working for some company, or you're working on the database, you need to have access, and all those are done by the DBA. Okay, so schema. Now, how do you create a schema? Let's say tomorrow you are developing a database. Let's say on your project, what you're doing right now, you want to create a schema, and you want to say, okay, I want to create a customer schema, I want to create a schema for DVD movies, I want to create a schema for rental tables. All you do is you say create schema name, and whenever you are creating a table, you just say create table name, and instead when you say just the table name, you say whatever schema you want in dot table name. Okay, so let's say I want to create this view inside sales schema. All I need to do is I need to say create view schema name sales dot view name. So whenever you are creating a view, first you need to say schema name and then the view name. So it's the same thing with the stored procedure you are creating. If you are creating a stored procedure, you say create procedure, the schema name dot the procedure name. Okay, so if you don't mention anything in here, it automatically goes to the DBO schema, okay, which is the database object schema. Okay, so by default it's DBO, but if you want in particular schema, then you can just mention it when you create the object. Okay, so you need to have the object before you can put any object inside that. So this, if you don't have the container human resources or department, let's say you have to create it first, and you say by create schema name. Once you have it, then you can create a table inside the sales schema called orders if you want, you know. So create table and schema name and then the table name. Okay, so you need to have the schema before you can create any object inside that. Once it's created, it's there. Okay, and if you, all you need to do is either you can create the schema and drop the schema. So you can say drop schema name. So let's say if you're not using any schema, you can say that. But the condition is you cannot have any object inside this sales schema. Okay, so let's say if there are so many objects inside it, you cannot drop the schema. First you have to drop the objects that belongs to this schema or this group. Okay, all right, so you can apply this concept in your project when you're trying to create so many tables inside the database. You can group these tables into different customer tables. You can have customer schema. Sales table, you can have sales schema. DVD tables, you can have DVD schema. Just you can try it one or two. You don't have to do it for all the tables that you create. Everything can go to the DBO, just one or two tables for trying out how things works, you know, in the project. So any questions about schema or views in the table? You cannot see it basically when you create the table. It just puts the schema in front of it, you know. So let's see. All you can see is the schema that the database has. This it just give you, these are the schema that exists inside the database. That's all it looks like. So there is nothing that you can physically see it. Only you can see is when you create the objects, then you can see the name in front of it. That's it. So the schema is just nothing but a group that you are creating, and you put things inside that group. That's it. Yeah. And if you have to find out all the objects that all the schemas that you have inside the database, you go to the securities. These are all the schemas that are there in this database. And you cannot, you can, yeah. Yes, so you basically group the objects to, inside that particular group that you've created. So let's say if you have a sales group in your company and you want all the sales tables inside that this group. So that's what it is for, to to group all things together in one group. You know, you don't want some tables in. So let's say if you don't create the schema, the database is gonna look like something like this. Everything is inside DBO. So all these tables in DBO, you don't know which table belongs to employee, which table belongs to department, which table belongs to sales. Everything is with DBO. So to make the database more organized, you make the schemas and you put the tables inside this. So see in here, everything is in DBO, because when you're creating the objects, you don't create inside any schema. So there is no grouping inside this database. Everything is just in one group. So it's just used to group the things together. And these are very small things. Yes, right. Yep. So see in here you see all the human resources, you see all the person. It's neat, right? You don't have some human resources table in here and then some in here. So if it's a DBO, everything is in DBO, you have some table human resources here, some down here, you know. So this is like very organized. And this is like, these kind of databases are very hard to find. Whenever you're gonna go in the company, you're gonna see mess like this. Everything in DBO. Because people very few databases use this like organized thing. You know how the company works. It's hard to keep things together because it's so agile. Things are changing every often, so it's hard to keep grouping together. So that's why they just create and then make the ERD, and then you figure out how the tables are connected from the ERD. I mean, it's just time of getting used to it, you know. Okay, so let's see, views, schemas. Okay, so now let's see. So let's stop in here for today. I think that would be good enough. I want you to practice, work on the project instead of going triggers and the database DBA things that we want to see, the permissions and everything we'll see in the next class. So you get time to work on the project. Okay, for today it's just, we can keep it short, and then so that you can come up with the next class about questions about the projects. No, I think Victoria is there and Glishan is there. Victoria is there, I guess. I have the triggers to cover. I have DBA permissions. It might be it depends if we can finish in the next class. We can, or if not, then I will. I mean, I will see if you have like coming up questions with the projects. If I don't get the time, if I won't be able to cover, if let's say everybody has so many questions, that I will try to answer those first and then try to cover the content. If I don't have much questions and I can cover the things that I have, then we might be in the last class. The triggers, and we have the permissions on the database that I was talking about, the DBA. So we're just going to do the overview, how the DBA works, what the permissions are, so you know when DBA talks about I give the read permission, I give you the write permission. So I want you to make familiar with those permissions thing. We're not gonna go into the detail about the permissions, but just so when you talk with the people who is doing the permissions, so you know, yeah, I know what you're talking about, you know. So I want to give you the overview about the permissions. So we have triggers and permissions. Yes. Okay. Uh, let's see. So Adan, do you mind if we postpone it to the next Monday? We'll skip this Wednesday and then we'll do direct meet on 25th. Would that work?